You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Let's get spooky. This is our station, Boo, where we explore the dark and mysterious corners of the world of horror, and we know that you are dying to listen.
And welcome to the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo, where we talk all things horror. Introducing our haunted host with the most. We've got Lisa.
Hello, groovy ghoulies.
We've got Karen.
What up, my horrorholics?
And I am Shannon. Welcome to the show. Today, we actually have a really cool book that we're going to be reviewing called Never Whistle at Night. It is a dark fiction anthology, specifically Indigenous dark fiction. Kind of cool. We're really excited to talk about it. So let's get spooky.
Hey, horrorholics. It's time for the Ghastly Report. Stay tuned for all the fun, spine-tingling news happening in horror today, from new releases to spooky events and so much more.
Alrighty, it is time for the Ghastly Report. We got a few fun things going on this week. Lisa, go ahead and start us off.
All right. Sad day today. Toronto's After Dark Film Festival founder and director Adam Lopez has passed away from his battle of cancer.
That is sad. That is sad.
Very sad.
What else do we got going on?
Shudder has a new show coming out called Guts and Glory. It's an immersive competition, and it has joined forces with Creepshow creator and SFX guy for The Walking Dead, Greg Nicotero. That looks like a great show. I know I'll be watching it.
Rock on, rock on. Karen, what do you have in the realm of horror that you would like to let the world know about?
Well, I don't consider this horror, but then again, science can be horrific. So, in the science world, they claim to have brought back from extinction dire wolves, Romulus and Remus, and also there's a sister, found out, her name is Khaleesi.
Yes.
Some people are like, did you really bring them back, or did you just change their DNA just enough to say that they're dire wolves?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see in the future. Mike Flanagan, our favorite horror director. Mike Flanagan's Stephen King's adaptation for Carrie will be filming in Vancouver next month. It will be for Amazon Prime, because Amazon Prime needs some love in the horror department. I see a lot of action, see a lot of fantasy.
Yep.
Yep.
And it looks like Flanagan's deal with Netflix is over, so probably the majority of his stuff is going to be on Amazon now.
Yay.
Yep. And actress Alicia Debnam Carey is going to be joining the sequel to Godzilla vs. Kong that is currently in production in Australia. So that's going to be interesting. I'm curious to see what character she is going to be, because there's a lot of new characters in this story that were not in the last one. And then iHorror, with the help of IMDb, has created a list for the most anticipated films of 2026. I understand we are still in like the beginnings of 2025. So thinking of like 2026 movies is a little crazy, but these look like some good ones. And there's been talk on a lot of them already. So this is in no particular order, but here are the ones that are going to be coming out. We have Scream 7, which is actually going to be releasing on the 30th anniversary of the franchise, which I thought that was kind of cool, or the same year, I should say, as the franchise. Then you have Mike Flanagan's Exorcist project is going to be coming out. It still does not have an official title, but I'm kind of excited to see where it goes. We have a Megan spinoff called Soulmate, which is going to be about love bots.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I mean, we already have love bots. What are you talking about? Because there's like, you could go to a website and build your own. Yeah.
Yep. Sam Raimi has a new one coming out that he's directing called Send Help. You have Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Evil Dead Burn. Jordan Peele has a new one coming out called Him. You have Terrifier 4 and Wolf Creek Legacy. So those are some 2026 films that we can anticipate on seeing. But with that, let's get on to the show and come check out some of our friends over at the ESO Network.
Hey Horrorholics, it's Shannon. Earth Station Boo has just launched its brand new merch store. It's time to get your hands on some killer gear. From our fun logo shirts, cozy hoodies, Let's Get Spooky stickers, and Horrorholics Anonymous totes, there's something for every one of our lovely little ghouls. We offer our spooky designs on many different types of products to fit your desires. But if you happen to see a missed opportunity, just let us know. And unlike most of Stephen King's adaptations, you know what I'm talking about, you won't be disappointed with the quality of the products. Head over to our link tree in our bio, grab your merch, show off your favorite horror podcast, and most of all, let's get spooky.
Holy podcast! It's Howdy Mike Gordon.
Howdy!
What are you doing here, Mike?
Well, Drew, I'm here to talk Batman 66, of course.
Batman 66?
That's right, folks. Join Drew Leiter and I every Wednesday for the Bat Chums podcast. We will discuss, recap, and review the Batman 60 series episode by episode.
Same bat time, same bat channel. Come on, Bat Chum. We don't have one moment to lose.
Don't worry, the worst is yet to come.
Alrighty. So we are going to be talking about the Indigenous dark fiction anthology, Never Whistle at Night. It is a collection of 26 different stories from Indigenous authors. It was edited by Sean Hawk and Theodore C. Van Alst Jr. They are actually going to be creating a second one. It's going to be coming out later. They just finished up the call for all submissions. So can't wait to hear about that one. We'll definitely be reviewing the next edition. Before we dive into our thoughts and things like that, we are going to give mention of every story that is in the book and the author who wrote it, because at the end of the day, even if we don't get to talk about all 26 of the stories in our podcast, we can at least acknowledge all of the stories that are in this book because they were well written. So before we get started, I'll go ahead and do that. This was also had a foreword or introduction by Stephen Graham Jones, who wrote The Only Good Indians that we did a episode on last year. So the first story was Katushka by Mathilda Zeller, White Hills by Rebecca Roanhorse, Navajos Don't Wear Elk Teeth by Connolly Lyons, Wingless by Marcy R. Rendon, Quantum by Nick Medina, Hunger by Phoenix Bordeaux, TikTok by Sherry DeMalaine, The One Who Kills Us by Brandon Hubson, Snakes Are Born in the Dark by D.H. Trujillo, Before I Go by Norris Black, Night in the Chrysalis by Tiffany Morris, Behind Colin's Eyes by Shane Hawk, Heart-Shaped Clock by Kelly Jo Ford, Scariest Story Ever by Richard Van Camp, Human Eaters by Royce K. Youngwolf, The Longest Street in the World by Theodore C. Von Alst Jr., Dead Owls by Mona Susan Power, The Prepper by Morgan Tatey, Uncle Robert's Rides, The Lightning by Kate Hart, Sundays by David Hurst Wallaby Weldon, Eulogy for a Brother Resurrected by Carson Faust, Night Moves by Andrea L. Rogers, Catgrass by Tommy Orange, The Scientist Horror Story by Darcy Little Badger, Collections by Amber Bazir Wardizia, and Limbs by Wambishko Rice. And I'm sorry if I butchered any of those names. And I'm sorry if we butcher any of the names or words throughout this show. Let's just go ahead and dive in with our initial thought. Lisa, you actually recommended this book for us to read, so why don't you go ahead and start us out?
Okay. I definitely recommend this book. It definitely gives a overview of the thoughts and perspective from the indigenous culture from Alaska all the way to Utah to the Carolinas. It's definitely something. There were some stuff in there that I even learned that I didn't know about. So I think it's definitely entertaining as well as educational on thoughts and feelings of the indigenous people. Highly recommend it.
This collection of short stories is actually really good, entertaining, and also tense, very tense.
Mm-hmm.
There were some times I had to put the book down and just walk away before coming back to it.
Same.
Yeah.
So there was some stories I'm like, they should put a trigger warning before some of these stories. But I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. There are some stories that, reach out to me and some stories that didn't. So
yeah. This is dark fiction, so some of the stories were a lot more horror-based than others. Some were just kind of more like a thriller or, just kind of spookier, but not necessarily horror. There was quite a few that were horror, and there was a few that hit some trigger points where it was like, ooh, I was not in the mindset to read that story or listen to that story. So yeah, even the stories I didn't really like resonate with were still extremely well written. And I don't think there was a story in this that I wouldn't have wanted to see maybe a more extended version of. I think all of them had at least how do we say it? Had at least the bare bones enough for it to be a bigger story or to be a longer stuff. Like these are short stories. So pacing can be a kind of hard with a shorter story because you only have, like 25 pages to like tell a story versus, 200. But I think the bare bones of all of the stories, great. And I would love to see some of them actually extended because I think they would have been better.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed.
So we're just going to go ahead and just dive on in because there's no other way to do it. Because again, this is a collection of stories. So there's a lot to talk about. But how does Never Whistle at Night reflect the unique aspects of the indigenous culture and beliefs about the supernatural? And was there any particular story that kind of provided that aspect or that kind of telling that really resonated with you?
It's interesting how they believe in like possession and stuff, but it's in a different type of aspect with the spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And just to see how they feel off. I had empathy with every single character in all these stories. I actually got a feeling for their culture, made me understand it more.
Yeah.
The storytelling was brilliant, even with the ones that were like, they were okay, but I couldn't put it down. I mean, I just could not stop listening to this book. Every story had great candor, and I think I like the supernatural ones a little bit better, but I did understand some of the more dark fiction and where it was coming from as well. One of my favorite out of the supernatural was Snakes Are Born at Night.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, snakes are born in the dark, except because it just pissed me off because that one character didn't listen. He just made me mad. Then all of a sudden he, gave birth to a rattlesnake.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they were describing the descent and all that, it's like, this is what you get for messing with it and you didn't listen. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I really liked that one. I liked the human eaters. That was really creepy.
Yeah, that one was.
I didn't want to look behind because I was listening to it in my car while I was going to work. And it's still dark when I go to work. So it's like, yeah, no, don't look in the back seat. Don't, I like the Kishtuka.
The very first one, yeah.
The very first one was great because I like the fact that we got a lot of female indigenous women's perspective because you don't hear a lot of that and what they go through. There's really, it's definitely gives you a perspective from how they feel about the supernatural, what they feel about other well, our culture.
Yeah.
How they keep on fighting, even if it's quiet, and they keep on going, which I think is great. Yeah, there were a couple trigger warnings. I didn't expect Sundays when I was at work listening to it. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I kept on listening.
There was a few that it was like,
Yeah.
ooh, was not prepared for that.
Yeah. I like the scariest story ever, but then I didn't like the way it ended. It's like I wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Karen, how about you?
I mean, you get a sense of, of culture with each story that most people don't realize that, the indigenous they know that there's a culture, but they don't get an insight to that culture. They don't get insight to that story, the oral traditions. And each story reflects, each nation's perspective on different types of supernatural, different types of horror story. And then, you get to see the effects of boarding schools and the abuse that Native children go through and the aftermath that they go through. And so, with Never Whistle at Night, you get a taste, really, of what Indigenous horror is. Because not a lot of, cultures share the same horror story, and yet some of them do share the same horror story because we are in this whole, we do all have this whole oral tradition, and the uniqueness is that they're different and yet they're the same. Yeah. And you try to like delve into that whole, how do we, which story is our story, which story is their story. For me, like, it's hard to pick out a particular story that resonated with me because, like I said, you needed a trigger warning for some of these, and I was like, yeah, I need to go to my safe spot. I need to go into my mind palace here. Yeah. But the one that made me mad, but it's part of Native culture, is the quantum story. Yeah. Like, you have to have a certain percentage of Indian blood before you could be considered Indian.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like the whole one drop rule with African Americans. But what made this story really made me mad about this story is the fact that a mother favored a child over another because he was more Indian than his older brother. And that made me mad. You don't do that to a child. You don't see a child as a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I know how it feels to be viewed as a thing. And a child is innocent. So
the whole neglect of that child was...
Yeah, I know.
It was horrible. But you do get a sense of that probably does happen in a tribe or, a nation, that some people do not see, if their child does not have that percentage, do not see that child as, Native, as Indigenous. So you probably do get that insight of that happening. This whole book reflects all nations, and yet, they're each nation. The stories are going to get to you. All the stories need trigger warning. I'm sorry, they do.
They do.
I cry. Yeah. Stories do make me cry, but when I'm crying in not a way that I shouldn't be crying, it kind of bothers me. But like I said, you do get an insight of what goes through an Indigenous person's life. Either, fictional, because this is fictional, that could probably happen. Some of it could probably happen, and some of it did happen with the boarding schools. So yeah, poor Sam.
Yeah. No, I knew that this question was going to be kind of like a hard one for us because I want to say there's like over 7 different Indigenous tribes that are represented in this book, and each one has its own tales and its own mythology, essentially. And I think it was extremely educational to see the viewpoints from a lot of these communities and how the individuals in the stories, whether they accepted or butted against that culture and that history, I think all of them were great in telling the story from an Indigenous perspective. I think Behind Colin's Eyes was the one that I think hit the most for me when it came to like the supernatural mixing in with the culture and then going in through the story, and there still being that that little bit of fear, but it's there's the knowledge that's coming through with that one. I think every single one, though, told a fantastic cultural tale and are amazing stories based off of real culture that I wish we could learn more about. Many of, as we've said, there's a lot of trigger warnings that should be taken with this book. Many of the stories in this anthology do delve into themes of survival and resilience and the enduring power of oral traditions, even. Which story stood out most to you guys in its portrayal of some of these themes, and why? I know for me personally, hunger was the one that I resonated the most with, which was the story about a girl, piecing out on a guy at some frat party to find out that he's been possessed by this hunger spirit who wants to devour, do very unspeakable things to this young woman. And her and her friend turn around and they trap this spirit and they exorcise it, essentially. I thought that was a really cool story because it showed survival and it showed resilience, and it showed that even though the spirit didn't think this girl from the First Nation was sticking to traditions or even knew the stories of what kind of spirit it was, she did. And she still had like the wherewithal and the knowledge and the power and the strength to persevere and beat it. So that one's the one that kind of like resonated most with me. Which ones resonated with y'all?
I would have to say Wingless and the betrayal of abuse of foster children in the system, because it kind of reminds me when the little girl was talking about how, let me get the names right, Punk was darker than her and he was kept at the porch and he worked in the fields, and she was kept in the attic because she was lighter and she worked in the house. It really reminded me of the whole, African American narrative of slaves, where you had the field slaves and the house slaves, and the whole abuse that happens, the abuse and the neglect that happens. So that really resonated with me because of the fact that you see another perspective of it. It doesn't just happen, in like one society or anything. It happens all around. And another one that kind of, resonated with me almost is the fact that a woman in White Hills was willing to sell herself for White Hills.
Yeah.
To purge herself or lose everything. And, like I can't see myself losing myself to gain something, a spot in elite society.
Yeah.
But people do it, and I've seen it happen. So it's kind of like, do you really want to give up yourself to be something that you're not? Be something that, people want to see you as or see yourself as or something like that? And another one that, I really enjoyed, I enjoyed the first story because, the fact that your culture is being taken and stolen, really. And then, you get your vengeance.
Yeah.
By getting your heritage back. Yay. I don't think everyone should do that, but don't go on a killing spree. Like, don't be like, like her. Well, she didn't really do it, but it was a monster that looked like her. To be like, for people who are nerds, don't be like Killmonger. Don't do bad things.
The Human Eaters is I liked that a lot by Royce K. Young, because the main character was talking about how everything's so technological and so white, quote marks, that all the indigenous people are losing their sight of the supernatural, and there's only a few of them left. And so she's trying to instill in either her grandchildren or her children that they can still see them when she's telling the story, so they'll get their sight back, which is something that in their culture that they accept as norm, but because of all this modern technology and everything, and going to boarding schools and forcing them to become Christians and everything, they're losing all their connection. So that I considered kind of like a survival because, they're trying to keep their culture alive and accepting that there's more to this than just this. Also, I like the scientist horror story because one of the little scientists had tried to get a grant so that she could talk about the indigenous people and how the storms and tornadoes and everything affect them. And she's trying to push through so people will be aware, because whenever there's a tornado or some kind of storm or flooding and they get affected, nobody reports on them. So I kind of like that, even though it was a story about the ghost town and the girl, but when she was talking about her grant and how she was trying and how she keeps on fighting to make people aware. So I like that. The grosser one was the TikTok, where the guy was trying to, his mom died and then he was traveling all over trying to find himself. And then he just went to his dad's house and, his dad eventually died, but his dad's like in a dream said the coyotes are looking for someone or something like that. And then he's in the woods trying to hunt because he just felt like it. And then he comes back and there's this tick and it gets bigger, and how he's trying to figure out, he's trying to remember how he was taught to get ticks out. And he was just panicking, and finally when it did and got it out, it skittered in a little corner, which was but just him trying to survive like the ticks bite and how he's trying to remember it. So to me, that was kind of cool too.
Yeah.
Ticks are disgusting.
Yeah, they are.
They are. I think even the very first story hits on a lot of those themes. Like when you have this young woman who's like, no, I'm not supposed to tell stories at night. I'm not supposed to say these things. And somebody who's so insensitive is like, do it anyways. Come on. And she's just like, no, this is how I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Do you want to die? Because that's how you die.
Yeah, exactly. In Never Whistle at Night, the settings play a significant role in amplifying the horror, or even the spookiness of a tale. I'm not even going to say specifically horror, because like I said earlier, some of these stories aren't really horror, but they are on the darker side. There's like a thrill factor for them. How do you think the setting, so the landscape, the location described in the stories, kind of shape the atmosphere and the tension and kind of the build of the story as a whole? Karen?
Location. I mean, if you have a location that doesn't match the story, it's not gonna, do anything. It's gonna be like boring. It's gonna fall flat. But if you have like location like Alaska or White Hills or any of the various locations that you have, the Carolinas and stuff like that, you'll get that sense of, okay, this is where I'm at, and oh, why is the walls closing in?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm on a farm, but we're killing chickens now? Oh, okay. I didn't expect that. So if without the location, you're not going to get your sense of story, because that's what all writers, one of the great writers tells me. He's like, Karen, you have to get your location right in order to get the tension that you're looking for, to get the atmosphere that you're looking for. If you don't, it's going to fall flat. Thank you, John Hartness. Because without your location, you can't really tell a story. Without giving it a sense of purpose, you can't tell that story. The reason why I like the first one, I'm not going to pronounce that name. I want to butcher it so bad. I love the first one so much because you're set in a cold location. You're set in Alaska, where tradition runs deep. You have this young lady and her mother. I don't like her mother, by the way, because her mother's trying to sell her off. And then she used emotional tactics and manipulative tactics, like, I'll send your sister over there. Sister's 15 years old. Send him to a house full of old men.
Old white men.
Old white men at that. And, you get that sense of coldness when she's outside skinning the fish, filleting the fish, when she's running from the monster, that sense of urgency, your heart pounding, the cold whipping your face.
You can feel it.
So, yeah, you feel it. And if you can't feel it, there's no story. It's just boring. So all the locations should give you that, sense of purpose, that sense of tension. And if it doesn't give you that, then I don't know what you're reading. Then maybe that story did not resonate with you.
Yeah. I think they did a great job in all of the stories setting a good visual scenes for you to feel in the story. Lisa, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, all the stories are really. My imagination was like I was in Alaska, I was in Utah, I was in the dark. I was the kid sitting there by
the campfire.
The campfire. I was the two girls trapping the hunger thing. I could see it all. I was on the last, the longest street with the devil guys and every single thing. Fantastic visuals, and I felt it. And the scariest story ever, I think that's what it's called. I was just him describing everything. I'm like sitting there like a little kid, just waiting for the rest of it. And then when it ended, I'm like, wait, what? I want more.
Yeah.
And it built the tension. I visualized all the kids getting all their rooms clean and all the yards and fixing this dilapidated, reservation that everybody was so tired from, and then just working together as a unit. And I just felt all that, and you could see it. That's what I really liked about it. Everything in there, you could see it, you could feel it. The tension was great. There was not one story I did not turn away from and go, oh, this is boring. It was all good.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about this collection of stories. Can't wait for the next ones.
Yeah, I mean, in the story Before I Go, and of the woman whose fiance had died while hiking a year before, and she goes on the same trek, you can feel the isolation in that story. You can feel the wind blowing at you while she's up on this cliff, and you can feel it. You can picture it in your mind, unless you aren't somebody who can visually see things in your mind, but you get the idea. Even in Snakes Are Born in the Dark, you can see that wall. You can see them, trampsing into the river. You can see even like the description of like the pus and stuff like that. Like you can see it. You can understand she's got this blister and now she's got desert sand in that blister. You cringe because you can feel that, you can see that. The way they set the atmosphere for these stories is top notch. Like they did a phenomenal job setting the scene, especially for them all being short stories as well.
Oh yeah.
But there was still so much that was left up to the imagination. Like we don't know exactly what the cliff portraits were, but at the same time, we understood that they were ancient and they were sacred.
Yeah, you reminded me of something about the portraits and whatnot. My sister-in-law was telling me that some of the pictographs in California were destroyed.
Yeah.
By vandals. That just broke my heart.
Yep.
Horrible.
Yeah, when you mentioned it, my heart just went, oh.
Yep. And for those who don't think that kind of stuff is important, are probably the same people who don't think history classes are important in school. History is meant to be learned, because if we don't learn our history, we are doomed to repeat it. And things like that should be held sacred, not even just on a cultural perspective, just as a human history perspective. That's somebody's story being told there. That story is important.
Yeah.
And the reason it's important is because somebody felt the need to put it there. So keep it, save it, do what we can to preserve it. I mean,
yeah,
like I understand like natural disasters are going to happen and we lose things that way. But that's different than somebody being an asshole and just rubbing their hands all over it. Or like in that story, Adam being a complete jackass and running his keys on it. I think he got the lesser end of the deal. He should have been the one covered in pus and sores and boils and blisters and all that, and not the other one.
He did give birth of a rattlesnake through his belly button, and that'd be kind of painful.
Yeah, but it's not.
Yeah, but he didn't get disfigured.
Well, didn't his stomach like explode, and it kind of, Travis, I think, had to like cover his stomach up, the big hole in his stomach from that.
Yeah, but that's not that was like a brief suffering. It's not like
the
walking.
Marissa was it Marissa, Melinda? I don't remember the name of the other character or the female character, but the female character, she was head to toe covered in all of this and was completely disfigured from it.
Exactly.
And she was the one who was actually remorseful. She was the one who said, you know what? You're right, cuz my B, I'm so sorry. You're right. And even told Adam, stop being a dick. Like, and then she's being punished in this story. I was like, Mandy, that's it. I was like, that doesn't sit right with me. Yeah, I was like,
it didn't sit right with me either.
Like, don't get me wrong. I understand, like, okay, yeah, she may have touched it, and therefore she should have some kind of consequence in that way. But like, to the extent that like she could barely walk because of the sores and blisters on her feet, and that she was completely covered and disfigured because of it, versus the real jackass just having to go a little crazy and give birth to a rattlesnake
and then die.
Like, I don't know. Homeboy, he could get what he wanted, but for her, I was like, wait, she changed. She learned, and she showed instantly that she learned, and she was like, no, this is not cool. My bad. Like, and even again, like I said, got on Adam, going, yo, dude, not cool.
She still got punished, which was. That did not sit well with me either.
No, same.
Yeah, he should have got the boils and the blisters and the.
He should have gotten everything.
Yeah, he should have gotten.
I would have been okay if she had maybe gotten like a couple of blisters just like on her feet, because she did touch it. Okay, but she said sorry, so
my bad.
I shouldn't have done that. You know, let her get some blisters that she probably would not have gotten otherwise.
Right.
But to be like, it was a little much in my opinion, but not my story. So while rooted in a lot of Native traditions, many of these stories explore fears that are universal, such as Before I Go, with her being in grief and losing her fiance and kind of following after him in a Romeo Juliet kind of esque thing, following him into the afterlife, being welcomed into Mother's arms. Which of these stories do you think best bridges the gap between culturally significant narratives and then the broader human fears?
One is the Navajos don't wear elk teeth. No, it's because it's like you have this person that you're attracted to, and then they're showing you this weird stuff. And then you start noticing all these little idiosyncrasies that are starting to affect you, and you're starting to worry about them. What are they going to do next? Kind of thing. And then I think he did have like some PTSD because he let the abuse go on for a while. You know, so that's kind of like a universal fear. What's going to happen if I get rid of him? Tell him to go away. I'm afraid.
It's why so many women stay single.
It's mostly the fear of being alone and the fear of being rejected, and that's what he was going through. But at the same time, I'm like, bruh, this dude sexually assaulted you.
I know, right?
Right.
That was kind of rough. That was a trigger warning there.
Yeah.
And then there's the other one. Where is it? With the little boy who turns into the elk, where he's afraid of night.
Oh, Collins.
Behind Collins' eyes.
Yeah, behind Collins' eyes.
Yeah, and it was wild because it's like, not only does it talk about the universal fear of being possessed, because there are a lot of cultures that don't like the whole possession thing, and also being afraid at night when he kept hearing something and then he'd look out and he couldn't see what it was, and he's this 10-year-old boy and he doesn't really want to go hunting because he's afraid, and It's just that's kind of another universal thing, that being afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So being possessed kind of thing.
Well, I understood the prepper because we all have that paranoia of something's going to happen. So we need to stockpile, especially with today's climate. We need a stockpile. But, putting somebody out of their misery, I don't think I could do that.
I mean, if they consented.
I don't think I could do that still either. I mean, could you? Could you really do that?
You know what? Yeah, I think I could.
Okay, you're better than me.
I'm not saying it wouldn't be hard, and I'm not saying I wouldn't be traumatized by it, but if I was in a situation where somebody was like, "Hey, I can't, you need to," if it was the most humane thing, I would do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the whole behind Colin's eyes, everyone has that fear of the dark. I sometimes too have that fear of the dark, especially when I don't know if I'm going to get the sleep paralysis demon.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm not going to get possessed because if I got possessed at night every single time, that's I would never sleep. Then you have before I go with the whole, everyone grapples with grief in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and it's sad.
It is.
And it's heartbreaking for Kira, the way that, she passes. Unfortunately, I did not want her to pass, but shit happens.
Yeah.
And then you have the whole fear of night in the chrysalis. You move in that whole, new house and you get that unsettling fear of what's that noise? Is it the foundation settling? Why do I hear footsteps? Because at that point you don't know if it's your mind playing tricks on you, or if it's the natural settling of the house, or maybe if it's if it's ghosts.
Yeah.
Because I could tell you, there's some days when I'm by myself in the house, and I hear just random creaks and groans and whatnot, and I'm like, now I know I'm here, and all the animals are with me. What's going on? I know the house has settled because this house is so old, it shouldn't be settling. Is it haunted?
Yeah.
And then, you have that whole family dynamic with the heart-shaped clock. We all have different, family dynamics. We all have the people who are the golden children of the family, and we have to come to terms with our past and the pain and the trauma that we go through. But yeah, what was I talking about here? I think I was just rambling at that point about, the common connection between culture and universal feelings, emotions, and tragedy.
I mean, they are told from a Indigenous perspective, have roots in other cultures. Like even the very first one, just a young woman being alone with an older man in a space, and he insists on being alone in that space with her, is terrifying.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've had older men, be creepy towards me, and it's just one of those, ew.
You creep on somewhere else.
Yeah. I actually saw on YouTube, there was a interview with the author of that story, and she said that it's actually based off of a real story that she was told about, and this one takes place in Alaska, and she retook this story to give power to the young woman of this story, because in real life, the old man brags about how he was able to get this young woman alone in a car in the middle of the night. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
That is a child. She is a child.
What? Okay. Before I get mad, collections. That one was another one where all the human heads and and the professor's like, and I have a special place for somebody of Indigenous descent. The fuck is wrong with you, lady? Don't get me wrong. I like oddities. I think oddities are kind of cool. If money was no object, I would love to have a human skeleton. However,
I have to know that it's ethically forced first.
I am not mounting somebody's head, like a deer head, up on my wall, and I'm not saving space for each of the different ethnicities and sexual orientations and what is wrong with people?
I don't know. I was like,
People be crazy. People be crazy.
Right? People be
Yeah,
crazy.
exactly.
The complexion kind of sounds like, that movie, The Collector and the
Yeah.
Collection.
Oh yeah.
There's a ton of movies that have like similar things, and that's why I'm like, what is wrong with people?
People be crazy, man. People be crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
And also, and I'm gonna come back to hunger again. It's a woman walking home from a party being hunted by a man. Like, granted, I get it, he's possessed. However, there are real human men
that do
that. Like, but that's a thing that us women have to carry, is having to walk alone at night and having to worry about our safety. And it doesn't matter what race you are, doesn't even matter what sexuality you are. It's just a fear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, with that story, Navajo don't wear elk teeth. Mm-hmm. I'm like, why are you walking alone with this man that you just met? I felt fear,
right?
I felt fear for him. I was like, he gonna kill you. You don't know he just walked out your house. Come on now. I choose the bear at this location.
Yeah. Also, with the hunger, you were saying, well, the thing that possessed the guy, he was reading all the guy's thoughts. So the guy already had ill intention and it was feeding him.
Yeah.
But what pissed me off is that the girls unpossessed him and then he's like, fuck you guys, you're weird. Yeah. Which is also another thing that universally women have to deal with. You can't be the heroes, or you can't be unusual, because then, oh my God, mainstream,
And honestly, like, that's probably more bruised ego than anything else. It's somebody who realized they got their ass saved by some ladies and is like, well, I can't
deal with this, man. I can't
make them think that I couldn't handle it, kind of deal.
But that's a common thing, though.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Bruised egos happen quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
It's not the first time, and it won't be the last time I say, are you that insecure with your manhood?
Yeah.
I mean, be surprised.
Because that's a you thing, not a me thing. But to continue this conversation, the anthology showcases a variety of storytelling, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit already. There's lyrical prose there to sharp and haunting narratives, and a ton in between. Which style or voice resonated most with you, and how did it enhance the story's impact? Like, how the stories were written. Like, do you feel like there was one that was like written better in that way for you to interact with?
I mean, some of the first person stories were, better, because it's like having a conversation with somebody else. Like, this is what I did, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But those tend to like grip you a little bit more, because, like I said, it is having like a conversation with somebody and talking about their day. Because sometimes those can be impactful, get more experience out of that. But it can be more, telling than showing when it's a first person narrative. Mm-hmm. Now, when you get the third person narrative, that's when you start feeling the tension. You get the whole landscape view. You get more description of what's going on. You get more showing than telling. And that could also, resonate with some people, because, you don't want to have a conversation. You just want to be like, the third perspective. You want to see what's going on. Like, I want to see what the landscape looks like. I want to see this. I want to see that. Because of how it's described, you get to feel the environment. You get to feel the people. You get to see the people, what they look like, unlike the first person. But I thoroughly enjoyed all perspectives of the novel, of the anthology. One of the stories that, that I really did enjoy, because it kind of it had that whole true crime feel to it, was Navajos Don't Wear Elk Teeth. That was like the whole true crimey feel. I'm like, there's something wrong with this dude that's walking up in here. I feel it. Don't you feel it, man? Are you just more paying attention to, like, this is a hot guy? Red flag, red flag, red flag. And then, he's slowly moving his stuff in. And I'm like, red flag, red flag. And then you have to call your friend. It's like, hey, teeth. What does these look like to you? Buddy, those are human teeth. Get out. Could you, like, that has that whole true crime feel to it. And that's what I loved about it. That was like that thriller. I'm like, oh, I knew it.
Yeah.
And that made me so excited that I knew.
Yeah.
I knew, because it could have went a totally different direction. He's like, yeah, I collect teeth. These are my animal teeth. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, cool. You're hot, you're handsome, and then next thing the protagonist could have been the killer, and you're like, oh shit,
Right?
Yep.
that would have been a twist, Mm.
What a twist.
Oh, poor white dude. Sorry, but I actually really thoroughly enjoyed that one because it was that whole true crime feel, and I love true crime because I could sit there and talk about all the serial killers and cannibals all day long, even while I'm asleep, and my sister-in-law could attest to that. Well, we had a conversation. I was asleep, and I was answering her questions, and she realized I was asleep talking to her.
Oh, wow.
So true crime.
My brother does that, but he also if he's not laying fully flat, his eyes stay open a little bit, and he's got blue eyes, so he doesn't have them wide open all the time anyways. So you'll think that he's awake because his eyes are open. You can have a full-fledged conversation with him and he'll be completely out. And we figured it out because we would be like, well, we talked to you while you were sitting on the couch and we asked you to do, blah, blah, blah. And he'd be like, I was sleeping.
That same thing with me. We were talking
we were just like, ooh.
Yeah, I was having a full-blown classification. Was sitting in an armchair just talking about a serial killer. Said everything I knew about the serial killer, what was happening, what was going on right there. And she was like, Karen, so you were asleep. Do you not remember we were talking about the serial killer? I was like, no, I remember the name. I don't remember what was the conversation about. She was like, you were talking about this, this, and this. Girl. I'm like, oh. I was asleep. I'm sorry.
Lisa, how about you?
That's so hard. The one of my favorite ones that resonated was collections, because the poor girl is in this party and she sees all the heads and everybody's ignoring the heads. And it's like, wait, you guys aren't paying attention. There's something wrong with this picture. And to me, it's like, because I'm aware of my environment all the time, if I saw something like that, it'd be, bye, see ya. And then it was too late. And then just the lady is explaining and she's talking about her friend who has full bodies. And it's just like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Right?
Yeah, I couldn't be quiet.
Yeah. And then the way she's like, she knows there's something wrong, but she doesn't understand why none of the other people in the room think it's wrong. So it kind of had that nice, okay.
Look, I know white people are crazy.
Yeah, but
we're not that crazy. I promise.
Yeah, my bud be like, hey, y'all see these heads on these walls? These human heads right here? I'm making it pointed out to everybody. Everybody. If one of us go missing, I'll make sure y'all know.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like none of the other people thought it was weird. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? Why do you want to be there? There's heads on the wall. Yeah, human heads. But so that one really resonated because it was like the main character, she was aware of the danger, but she felt like she couldn't escape. And it was just like, and the other ones are like, la-di-da-di-da, there's nothing wrong with this.
Yeah.
So
like a horror movie all over again.
I'm going to say this. For me personally, I think it depends on my mood, on which one or which storytelling style resonates more with me. Because if I'm in I don't know, if depending on my mood, if I'm wanting something that's a little bit more thriller / true crime-ish, then the way that the elk teeth one would be that match. But then if I'm wanting something that's a little more spooky psychological, it would then be collections. Or if I wanted a girl boss, hero, then I'm gonna want to listen to or read Hunger. And so I think it just kind of depends on my mood and where I'm at and what I'm wanting to engage with, on which voice or style resonates more, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's go ahead, kind of wrap this up. So final thoughts, and then we're just going to do a rating on the anthology as a whole. I don't want to do the individual stories because that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah, it is.
But honestly, I think each of the stories is extremely well written, especially for it having to be a short story and for it being part of a collection. So with all that being said, let's get into the ratings. Lisa, you get to go first.
I have to say I give it a 5 skulls because every single story kept me engaged, even the ones that were a little bit longer and draggy, which there were only a couple of them, but I still engaged and I couldn't stop listening. And I like the fact that I got more perspective on the Indigenous lifestyle and what they've had to go through, and some of the Indigenous myths that I didn't already know about. So yeah, 100%. I can't wait for the next one.
Me too. Karen?
I enjoyed all the stories in the book, but I have to give it a 4 because of the fact there was no trigger warnings.
Okay.
Because, I had to, put it down, be like, okay, I'm going to go over here and rock myself, hug myself. Come here, my kitties, cuddle with me. Get me back in the right mindset. But, I enjoyed the book, the anthology, because some of the stories was kind of like, remnant to the African American plight, the quantum, the wingless, and others. So yeah, I think everyone should read this, just at least to get a perspective of indigenous culture, to see like what their supernatural elements are, to see what type of what they had to go through history, and just to get some good readings.
Yeah,
because who doesn't like good readings?
Yeah, I agree with you, Karen, that it should have had trigger warnings for some of the stories because they were quite triggering. I don't know if it takes away from the book enough for me to knock it down quite a bit. I'm probably going to give this like a 4.9 because I do think that should be there, but whether it's there or not, I probably would have still read the story. I just would have been in a better mind space to be able to go, oh, I know that this is coming up. I can mentally prepare myself for it. But the stories themselves were amazing. I think it's a great collection. I can't wait to see what they come up with next. I know that they, like I said, they've recently finished the submission portion. So they're probably combing through all of those and finding the perfect pieces to put all together. So I am intrigued to see what will come next. But this collection gives great perspective from many different viewpoints, be it from tribes, from a male or female perspective, from straight and LGBTQIA. There's perspective from those who have completely embraced their indigenous roots to those who have not. And I think it's a fantastic starting point for anybody who wants to get into indigenous literature, and not just indigenous horror, although this does encapsulate that. But this gives you 26 different authors that you can follow and find more works from. Really can dive deep into this essentially a genre of literature. So I'm kind of excited. If you've read this story, our lovely little ghouls, which one is your favorite? Or which one was the one that you had to go, ooh, I need to put this book down because I need to process what I just read. Like I said, or like we said, I should say, we've all had to do that with a couple of the different stories in this book. But you can tell us on our social media. We can continue the conversation there. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok, X, Threads, Blue Sky. We have our Facebook group that is always hopping and bopping. So you can also subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to podcasts, like Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. Please go leave some comments. We've been talking to a few fun people on there. So come hit us up. Lisa, where can they find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and that's pretty much it right now.
All righty. Karen?
Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X formerly known as Twitter, TikTok, and Reddit.
Rock on. And you can find me at Spill Tea Wine, Media Mind on all the things. But as always, before we go, thank you all so very much. We absolutely love and appreciate you all. You guys are amazing. We honestly couldn't do this without y'all. Your support and everything really does actually mean so much. We also want to give a shout out to Nevermore Hollows because they have been so kind and chatting with us in our comment sections on YouTube. So stay spooky, our lovely little ghouls.
And this has been the Spooky and Kooky podcast of Earth Station Boo.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.